Hi, I'm Rhoda. Thanks for visiting my website and blog. I hope that you find the information here useful and interesting. I've been a therapist for over 30 years. When people arrive in my office, this is how I introduce myself. I believe that I work with people's souls. I use Bill Moyer's definition that soul is a reverence for what's authentic. The things that people are least authentic about are painful things and difficult things. So this room becomes a place where people can be terribly honest about painful things and difficult things. Over the years, literally thousands of people have come into my office. If I do my job well, they leave with a brand new perspective on what is going on in their lives. I teach clients how to better understand their own behavior and the behavior of others. There are many basic lessons that I've repeated over and over again and now have written down, illustrated, and put on my website. I've listed them by topics such as anxiety, breaking up, grief, parenting. You get the idea. You can also get to my blog from here. In my weekly blog updates, I expand on my ideas about therapy and personal growth. They're more complicated versions of what's on the website. I developed the website because I wanted to help more than one person or one family at a time. That was important to me. I appreciate the many people who have used the website to enhance their lives. You might be wondering how therapy can make a difference to you. So I want to explain two possibilities. One is that we're all lopsided. We all tilt in a certain direction that might not be good for us. Let's say, for example, anxiety. So we're anxious. That means fear is making our decisions. It's taking over our life. It makes your world too small. Therapy is about exploring the other side. What's the other half of that equation to be a whole person? The other half is about courage. The courage to have new experiences, to live life instead of avoiding life. If you want to read more about anxiety, I have an anxiety category on the blog, and there's a section on the index labeled anxiety. Another thing that we can learn about is how to bear the good and bad in the world, in other people, and in ourselves. Let's talk for a moment about self-esteem. Many people do a power play with self-esteem. The bad erases the good, or the good erases the bad. It's either or, and that doesn't really work very well. What self-esteem needs to be is the good sitting next to the bad. The reason this is important is because then you can take ownership of both sides of who you are. That leads you to the ability to apologize. That leads you to be able to grow. Growing is such an important thing to do. You have to be able to have one foot to grow in the familiar and the certainty of who you are, good and bad. And then you need to put your other foot in the uncertainty of experimenting and see who you can be. That evolves into a far more interesting person. I'd like to share with you my least favorite words in couples therapy. If they really loved me, they would know what I want. The reason these words are difficult are because they set up expectations that are unspoken, which then leads to disappointment. Disappointment is a burden on a relationship. It's a very difficult thing if it piles up over time. That's even worse for a relationship because it can lead to resentments, and then it can even lead to bitterness. People say this because they want to avoid being responsible for asking for what they want. This is a basic tenet of therapy. If you want something, you have to ask for it. That's the way it is. Asking for what you want, particularly about difficult things, hard things, can be 75 conversations over 2 or 3 years. The differences respected, that's what couples therapy is about. And it's a very hard thing to achieve because underneath, we all want a clone. We want someone to feel the way that we do, to think the way that we do, to always give us support. But a relationship is not real or authentic without disagreement. Disagreement and doing it well is an important thing to learn. Anger is not something that should be erased from the emotional toolbox. That's a very bad idea. But doing anger in a constructive way to make a point when something is important can be a challenge. And that's what you learn in couples therapy. You might be wondering what makes a good therapist. I think the most important criteria is that you feel a click, that you can truly be yourself and share. You laugh together, you share your tears, you share from your dark side, you share the things you're proud of. The whole range of who you are is being shared, and that's really what makes it work for you. Being able to disagree with your therapist, being able to say, no, that doesn't really fit who I am. That, being authentic is really what it boils down to. That's what's really important. It also, I think therapists have to do more than listen. It's only 50 minutes. It's not a big amount of time. It's something that needs to be worked on after the hour is over. The 50-minute hour is over. It is something where you have to work on expanding your opportunities for personal growth, reading a book, watching a movie, trying something different. If you're a people pleaser, being able to say, I disagree with you. That's what it's about, is being able to expand the possibilities for growth. If a creative therapist, I think, is very helpful. The last point I'd like to make is that you don't want a therapist that's too hand-holding or too challenging. It's really an art form because you have to feel supported and you have to feel challenged. Real change requires doing new things, and that can be scary. So you need to be able to take some small steps of doing something in a different way for the first time, and then the second, and then the third.